This is TWiP. Hey folks, welcome back to this very special episode / edition of This Week in Photo. If you've been following along, you know that I did a one-on-one interview with my good friend, Mr. Ron Pepper. He is one of the representatives of a company called HDR Soft that they make a piece of software called Photomatix that allows you to do, you guessed it, HDR photography or high dynamic range photography. So this is a standalone demonstration of the software, but I would encourage you to go back to the one-on-one interview I did with Rob to kind of get a background of the Photomatix company and HDR if you're not that familiar with it, the technique, the controversies, and all that stuff. But this video is designed to be a walkthrough of the software. Not much talking like I'm doing now, more show me what the thing can do. And to show us that stuff is Mr. Ron Pepper. How's it going, man?
Very good. It seems like I haven't been here in a long time.
Yeah, it's been, 24 hours since we sat here virtually.
You call me special.
Special. You are special. You're my special friend.
Different meaning for us, people from the 80s. That is a different meaning.
You're very especial. How's that?
Ooh. Gracias.
There you go. There you go. Cool, man. So yeah, thanks for doing this again. We're going to sit down, or we're sitting down now, but we're going to go through the Photomatix software. I'm excited to see what has changed in it. But more importantly, for the TWiP audience, I want you to kind of dive in with fresh eyes. This is somebody that hasn't used Photomatix before, and they want to see what it's all about. They're interested in this HDR stuff, but it seems way too complicated to even attempt. So help us out with all that. I know you have your demo all set up and ready. I'm gonna step aside, give you the stage, and I'll be just backstage watching you do your thing. So take it away.
Yeah, I've prepared basically two really short things, and I intended a very short demo, but I know you and I will probably talk about it, and it won't be too short. So, yeah. I wanted to show later one of them. I'll go through the whole process step by step. And I might mention the new features because there's a new version just came out. So Photomatix Pro 7. I'll mention some of the new features as we go, but really I want to give a general demo for how this works and some tips and tricks as we go along. Perfect. And so I'll do a batch second, and we'll use a little. It's like a protracted real estate job. But first we'll do one of those classic kind of HDR shots that probably everyone's expecting to see if you've heard of it. And I know you asked me to do one that's kind of artsy or whatever. So
yeah, I wanted to see a real one, not real. I wanted to see a practical one for like people that are doing real estate photography, and then another one that's doing kind of the crunchy, the hyper realistic version of HDR, just to show both sides of the coin.
I refuse to show extremely hyper, but I'll show you what I know what you're getting at, and that's all good. So okay. On my screen, oh, yeah, there we go. On my screen, what I did, I just pulled up a set of, from some time ago, of bracketed sequence. And this is taken first thing in the morning with the sun literally in the scene. So if I just pop up the middle exposure, you can see that nothing's working there, right? It's overblown on one where the sun is, and it's just, there's not much detail in the shadow on the left. And it's supposed to be a cute scene with this little abandoned tricycle. And so what I did was, rather than saying there's no shot here because the light's no good, or maybe waiting for the light. And I think that morning it was we were out shooting in the mountains, and I found some great shots that didn't need HDR either. So I want to stress that. Like I always tell people, don't think that just shooting brackets and using HDR is going to make a photo that wasn't there a good photo.
Yeah.
However,
crap in, crap out, right?
Well, yeah, but if the light isn't right, this is a way of dealing with that and getting something out of it. So let me just make the point of going through the bracketed sequence, and these were bracketed one EV, one stop apart. That's what the camera that I had at the time would do. So here's the darkest shot, and the sun is just the center of the sun is blown out, but otherwise it's very, very dark and you don't see much. And then just one stop at a time. It's brighter and brighter. I don't know if my Mac is really cooperating with me very well there. So now there's that middle one we saw before, brighter, all the way until we can see the details in that old crunchy looking cabin. When you mentioned crunchy, that's why I brought this one up. I remember this being crunchy. So what do we do with that? Well, the process, once you've done the shooting, and I think we're gonna talk more about shooting later, right, Frederick? But now we'll just talk about what we do once we have it. So there's the bracketed sequence that I had. And I'm just going to drag those over to Photomatix Pro. All right. So here, again, I just want to go step by step. The first one is just asking, what do you want to do with it? Yes, we do want to go ahead and merge to HDR. All right. Then you'll see a pop-up that describes your shots and shows what you're doing, details of the shots. That can be useful because for instance, sometimes I am out and I'll over bracket. I'll shoot brackets that are not needed because I'm just in a hurry, or I have a plan, and part of my plan is that I'm probably not going to use all the brackets. So if that's the case, I can just uncheck them and not use them. So that's what that's for. The next pop-up, and Photomatix tries to show you just what you need to know now without making everything confusing. Because frankly, if you listen to our talk about HDR before this, it can get complicated. The technology behind it can be complicated, but really the process is not. So it's trying to keep things in good perspective. So this is the merging process. We're still merging those bracketed photos into one 32-bit file at this point. And as part of that, alignment can be important. Now I shot that sequence on a tripod, so I'll still use the alignment, but I probably don't need it. But I can go ahead and choose the preset of the tripod alignment just in case there was some minor movements. It'll still correct that so that everything lines up. It's actually might be a good time to mention that you don't need to shoot bracketed photos on a tripod. You can absolutely handhold it. All the regular rules for handholding will apply. So the slowest shutter speed, you want to make sure that it's a fast enough shutter speed to handhold, but that's regular photography. That's not specific to HDR. It's just easy when you're bracketing to not realize that you're going to get some slow shutter speeds if you turn on bracketing. Mm-hmm. So if you do handhold, just make sure to use alignment. And depending how steady you are, you can even choose the alignment that you need, the levels of alignment. So what I really want to point out there are a lot of options to take care of that. The show options to remove ghosts, I'm going to select that, even though in this scene I don't think there is any need for it, but I'll show you what that is in a second. If I'm loading raw files, I probably want to use noise reduction and perhaps chromatic aberration reduction as well, depending on, again, normal photography things. Like if you have a wide angle lens and really bright dark contrast, you probably need the chromatic aberration reduction. But these are TIFF files, so the noise reduction has already been applied. Okay, so moving on. So now it's going to go show me, since I chose the deghosting option, I'm going to get this. This is an optional panel where I can see what do I need to remove that was moving in the scene. So let's say that let's say it was windy and these little reeds, this grass, this funny stuff down here on the bottom right, let's say that was moving around. I could use automatic deghosting and it would just look for things that had been moving between between the brackets. That could be trees. People could be walking by, a bird could fly by, cars, stuff like that.
Is that new? Is that automatic deghosting feature new, or has it always been there?
Oh no, it's not new. It's always kind of being improved. There's your. Okay. We can make AI conversations later, but it's always alignment and deghosting is always kind of being improved. But no, it's been there a long time. In fact, selective deghosting. Well, actually, so just to finish about automatic. It'll look for it, and you can choose on the left there. This is probably looking a little small in the screen sharing, but you can choose which of the original photos to base the deghosting on. So, of course, these are combined. It's going to have to choose one of them to use for the deghosting, and you're able to choose which one. So maybe if people are walking by, on the slow shutter speed, they might be blurry. So you don't use that one. You choose the one that you want to use out of it, but it'll also do it automatically. Now, selective deghosting lets you actually just, so for in this example, I could draw around these little grassy area, if that's what was moving around a lot. And then I mark it to be deghosted. So that way it isn't looking for other things throughout the image where you'd avoid it. Maybe it's going to deghost something that you don't want it to deghost or doesn't need it. So you can take really specific control here and also choose which one it's based on. So if I want to use one of the brighter images or darker images, I can change that right here. And then I can preview what it's going to look like. I can even save. That's actually a new option in this version, is I can save these choices that I make, so that if I run this combination of images again, I can just load those deghosting choices that I've made before. And there are some situations where it's really important. Like I'm a panoramic guy, so sometimes I'm deghosting a whole 360 degrees around. I can recall a project of I forgot what's that New York, is it Skyline Park? I think it was new when I was there some years ago. And we walked along Skyline Park and I took a bunch of panoramas, and I had so much deghosting to do because there were so many people moving around. Yeah. So if I didn't get something perfect, I would have to go and start from scratch on the deghosting when I went back. But now we can save what I've done and edit it later. So that's kind of nice. That's by popular demand, popular request. Okay, so let's I'm going to remove that. It doesn't really matter in this case. I could have brought a better sample that needed deghosting, but if we have time, we can do that later. So I'll click OK, and it'll move on to the real meat of what we're doing here. And I'm going to start with something that doesn't look good on purpose, because something I hear a lot is people say when it comes up and Photomatix is thinking that it's like the automatic suggested settings, but that is not at all the case. It does not try to predict what you're going to like. Instead, it'll, when you first open it up, if you're a brand new user, by default, it'll bring up something like this. This is just kind of the first settings that show. So in the background, and again, if you listen to us talk about this if you listen to us talk about the technology behind this, you'll know that in the background, there's a 32-bit file created of this combined, what was it, 7 images or whatever it was. And now we need to make that something that can be viewable, because a 32-bit file is just a bunch of data. It's not an image, and it really can't be viewed. So what you're seeing now is a preview of how we're going to make it viewable. It's been kind of crunched down into a regular histogram space. Now, there are a million ways you can go. If you look on the right, there are a bunch of presets there. And these are presets that can be for anything. In this particular image, you can even see how crazy some of it's going to look. Here's where people that say they don't like HDRs because they think it looks like this, but it can look like that, but there's no reason it has to. It can also look like this, look like this, look like this. So all levels from boring to crazy to natural to artistic. So without going down into a rabbit hole too much, these presets over here are supposed to be a place to get started.
No, are those presets, are there, another or a lot of other applications will have like celebrity presets in there. Like you want the John Doe look or whatever, insert your favorite HDR photographer's name in there. Do you guys do that, or are these from the engineering team?
Oh, they're kind of I don't know, actually over the years, it's just something that's built up where, again, every scene is different, every style of photographer and every way of shooting, it's all so different that we just over time have built up kind of starting places. And no, we haven't done any like celebrity stuff, although people will give away or sell presets. And one of the reasons to do that, to go out and get somebody's presets is just to get ideas. And we have been asked for different, sometimes some promos and things. Can you make some presets? Or some other photographer will say, here's mine. So yeah, there's been some of that, but those can be, excuse me, those can be added custom. You can make your own. In fact, let me show you that. Let's say I start with, let's say I start here, and I don't have, I like what's going on here, but I want a little bit more to show on the tricycle there, so I can turn up the strength. I should really make clear a couple things before we move on, and I'm just going to mute and cough real quick. So take a timestamp there. So the software has many ways of processing an image. This is the tone mapping step. You can see the different processes up here on the left, and they have different names that have evolved over the years and been created, adding new methods, new engines that go on behind the scenes. The original one from the early 2000s that everybody knows is Details Enhancer, where you get, that's a lot where that look came from. But you can also avoid that look by reducing down some of the strengths. It gets overused a little bit. So things like this. So already it looks, you know, more realistic, right? So you can get all kinds of, and I'm just goofing around here really quick. You can get all kinds of different looks. A side note, an insider tip is that the Details Enhancer is still the most powerful in terms of maintaining the dynamic range. Like you can really, anything you put in, that dynamic range can always be maintained with this method. And with some thoughtful choices here, plus a little bit of post-processing, like bumping up some contrast areas, you can get really great results. So I don't, the Details Enhancer is still, it's the original, still a classic. The other ones usually are intended to be realistic easily. And again, depending on the scene, and this is not that realistic of a scene, but depending on the scene, you can get all different levels of realism. So without going too deep into all of those, I just want to talk about one more thing, which is fusion. So on the top there, and I realize this is going to look small here, but I hope people try out the app. You can try it for free. But there is a fusion option, which is, I use it all the time, especially for things like real estate that you're just looking for simple realism, and just all you're doing is trying to bring the dynamic range together and not get too creative about it. And it's really easy to get natural results right away. So like Fusion Natural, which you can reach also by just clicking on the natural preset over there, is a great way to start. If you're getting lost and not feeling like it's realistic enough, go to Fusion. Another thing you can do is use this filter menu above the presets, and you can filter by method, all the methods that I just mentioned, or by artistic, real estate, realistics. There's different presets that tend to work, again, always different, but they tend to work well for certain situations. So that's another place to start. Like here's a pretty realistic place to start that you can continue playing with. A little bit oversaturated, but otherwise, so we already have a pretty good realistic result that way. All right. So what else do another really nice feature is just going with brush style. So let me find something close to what I would do. Okay. This one looks pretty close to what I would like for this image, where I'm like, my thing was, I like how the lens flare kind of points to the tricycle. So I want to make sure that that's all visible. And if I want to work on a specific area, I do have a brush tool here. So I can choose a brush or lasso, choose the size, etc. I can play with, let's play with brightness perhaps, and just paint in. So you can just, if you just want to work on a specific area, that will work like that. So that's a good thing that I wanted to point out. And then finally, for the moment anyway, the blending area at the bottom left lets you, if you want to, you can take one of the original images and bring up its opacity. So you're bringing back part of one of the originals. So you can, that would apply really nicely. Again, if you're really close, but you feel like there's a little bit of that, I don't know, either the uncanny valley where something doesn't look quite right. Let's just bring in 20%. And I feel like that brings back part of that original image. Another use, another use for it is just, you feel like there we go, is you just feel like one of the images should be the one that really drives the image, and the other ones should be a little bit less weighted.
Right.
WEIGHT.
Yeah.
So sorry, inside joke for people listening. Okay. So yeah. And then at this point, let's say, we're just going through here really quickly. And I try to avoid talking about all of the different sliders because, again, every situation is different. And I really encourage people to try them out and see what they do for them. There is a little help box on the bottom where if you open that up and you hover over the sliders, it'll give you some information about what's going on there. But it's important to know that this whole process was kind of created for the purpose. The sliders don't match up in the way they work to other apps. It's a unique app. Tone mapping is a unique thing. This is why you would want a specific app for tone mapping compared to why doesn't it work the same way as Photoshop? Well, because it's a very different purpose, a very specific purpose.
Let me throw a question in there. Yeah. So just in terms of workflow, I know there's no one right answer for this, right? So I'm braced for that. But what's best practices here? Is it best practices to go out, do your shots like you did of this shot, bring them back into Photomatix, do your tweaking, presets, yada, 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 create the image that you want and export that, bring that into Lightroom or Photoshop and for finishing? Or is it better to bring all those images from the shoot into Lightroom and do whatever you're going to do to them and then push them over into Photomatix for crunching together to make that 32-bit file and then export it? Where should you start?
Two main avenues there. The general recommendation is you do not pre-process the images. So when you create a 32-bit file, it's looking for a linear information. Anytime we do anything in Lightroom, if the camera creates a JPEG or if you create a TIFF or a JPEG, then that's not linear anymore. It's been demosaicked is the real word, but it's been processed already. Mm-hmm. So it's best to not do that. Definitely don't sharpen. Definitely don't do. Well, definitely that's the main one. And then
just leave it alone.
Yeah. Well, the it depends part is where I mentioned that there's this fusion thing, and fusion is a little different than tone mapping. And if you're going to use fusion, you have more freedom to pre-process. You can make the images look a bit better prior and then combine them with fusion. But if you're doing HDR and tone mapping, you want to leave it completely unprocessed. So you can either use the RAWs directly in Photomatix, or you can still have another good recommendation is that using a dedicated RAW processor is still an advantage because Photomatix still has to convert RAWs when you load them in. Now it converts it to a 16-bit fabulous, high-end file. It's not converting it to it's not compressing it. It's not doing anything much to it. It's still linear, but using a dedicated RAW processor still is a high-end dedicated RAW processor. So it does the best job at things like chromatic aberration and noise. Mm-hmm. So, and if you do that, then you can do things like lens correction ahead of time. That's a good one to do first. I didn't do it in this case. There are some problems, and I'll show that we can correct that even directly in Photomatix if we want to. But yeah, sorry, as always, it depends. So depends. Normally don't do any pre-processing except like if it applies, lens correction, noise reduction, good high. What do you call that? proper workflow stuff would be to apply lens and noise and stuff in RAW. Okay. And then having said that, like I'll show you in a minute where in the real estate situation, these are JPEG. They're going to be JPEGs out of camera. So all that stuff I said is completely up to you. Is completely up to you. So and what it comes down to is what's your purpose? How much time are you spending on images? What kind of workflow do you want to use? One thing that I do highly recommend is one thing you mentioned is after Photomatix processing, I fully intend to post-process a bit. I fully intend to add in usually a little bit of shadow is normal, because the tone mapping process is all about reducing contrast. You have this high contrast scene. You saw that the camera couldn't capture this scene by itself. That's high contrast. And the purpose of what we're doing here is to reduce contrast. So if you reduce it too much, you lose all those fabulous shadows and stuff. And that can,
right?
Depth, yeah. So I do fully, I think it's a mistake to expect your final results out of Photomatix in most cases, but it depends. And I'll show you here. Excuse me. I'm just coughing a bit. Let me click the next finish button to show you the next part of this process. And this process could be done in a minute or minutes, of course. We're just talking. So now, if you want to, you can have it show this finishing touch panel that lets you do some basic post-processing. This one I noticed it needs a little bit of straightening. Like on the left there, I can see I want to either crop or straighten that little some details out that are on the left. So, and I noticed this cabin is leaning a little bit. Now I kind of like that because it's supposed to look old and rickety and everything. So maybe leaning is okay, but let's treat it like we want the verticals to be correct. So we can do that here right in the finishing touch. And it did happen to crop out that part I didn't like already, but if it didn't, I can still add my crop. I can, if I want to constrain it, if I want to make a 3x2 for required sizes or whatever, we have all those options. I don't like it. I don't like that crop for this image. So I'm just going to, oops, I meant to go free. I'll pull it out here, get our little tricycle and our little flare into into that little spot that we always look for composition. And okay, so we can do the cropping there. If I want to add contrast here, I can. It's a very basic. I would probably do this in another dedicated editor, but adding mild contrast already did kind of what I had in mind. So maybe that's enough. So maybe my image is ready right out of Photomatix. So let's go back to very mild. So let's say I'm happy with that. I'll click done. And from here, yeah. So when I save it, I even have the option to, down here, if I'm going to do heavy post-processing, and again, hey, the audience is photographers. You guys know this, but if you're going to do heavy post-processing, let's save a 16-bit TIFF or a 16-bit DNG. If I'm done, let's go ahead and save a JPEG. If it's going out to other people, if it's going out to the web or whatever, let's make it smaller for web. So you have all these options. I can even open it in a post-processing application if I want to. So when I save it, it'll automatically open it in, if I choose Photoshop here, then it'll import it to Lightroom. So I have all those kind of integrations there. All right. So that's, like I say, that could be done all in a couple of minutes, or you could obsess over it for half an hour, or you could, but all these steps normally just take a minute. Yeah. And that's the one by one kind of the classic type of workflow in Photomatix Pro. And, so if you're working on an artistic piece, that's probably the way to go. I'll go ahead. Oh, I should mention, I can always choose things like I can go back and redo with other settings. What if I say, nah, I don't, or I can save it as a 16-bit TIFF or as a JPEG and send it to Frederick and say, what do you think of this? Give me your constructive criticism. And then I can just click redo with other settings and I'm right back in here, and I can, right from where I was, I can start to do more adjustments. So that's another possibility.
And then from a workflow perspective, when you're at this point and you're, assuming that you're happy with this result, this is it, it's good. You spit it out and then bring it into your finishing app of choice. I mean, like your particular workflow. Like I know it depends, but your workflow. What do you do after this step?
Yeah, mine I almost always would do probably in Lightroom, and there's a plugin you can do this directly. So if you have your raw files are in your Lightroom library, this Photomatix Pro comes with a export plugin, so you can do those pre-steps that I mentioned. They just make sure your sharpening's off, your noise reduction's on, and a couple other things, and then you can select them and export them, and then you'll get the same standalone interface. And it'll then when you click done, it'll go back to Lightroom for post-processing. And I would otherwise, if you're an Adobe user, you can do that, or you can open it in Adobe Camera Raw, which is it's basically the same as Lightroom without the management, the digital asset management.
Sure.
But if you open in ACR, then you get the same post-processing choices. And so I do like that because, in fact, let's see, why don't we do that? I'll just save a full size one and open it in Photoshop. Might take a second, but yeah, then you can, my preferred process is like that because I think it takes at least a few tweaks. I can get really specific, but I like to do things like just make sure that the black slider is where I want it, and the same with the white slider. So you're probably familiar with these kinds of techniques, and get really specific. And I think, when I processed this originally, I think I did a little bit of color on the grass reeds there. So yeah, that would be my process, is to definitely do some quick post-processing afterward. Or if you're really working on something important that's going to go into being printed on many people's walls, then maybe you're spending quite a bit of time on each of these steps. But I think post-processing is an important part of that. Post.
Yeah. So you're not done. You're not done in Photomatix. You're rounding the finish line is in sight, but you're not quite there yet.
Yeah, typically it's one of those tools in certain workflow. Yeah, that's the way I look at it. Let's go on to let me show you the batch, where you can go Command B or click on the batch, or you can even just drag a folder of files onto. Oops, let me go back here. I grabbed a. Oops, I would mess up my batch because I saved that image in the in the wrong place.
Oh, okay.
So one thing you can do is just from coming in from a shoot, and this is on the Mac, but same thing on Windows. You just use the Explorer and just drag images over to the window, and it'll even instigate a batch that way. But I wanted to show you the batch bracketed photos, the whole shebang here, where this is one of those windows where I feel like it's a professional tool. Like you're just filling in the choices to get the heavy lifting done. Yep. So I'll just show you I took a handful of photos from a regular real estate shoot. So that way we don't have to go through all 40. But so I'm just going to select the folder and like I said, I just purposely shot JPEG and RAW on scene. And the idea is if the JPEGs are good enough, I can skip the time and the steps of RAW processing and just combine the JPEGs. And then if there's a problem, I always have the RAW if I need it. So these images are, I believe they are four shots for each bracketed set. So the darkest to the brightest only took 4 shots, and it was spaced 2 EV apart, for those that are wondering. It has the option.
How do you know how many shots to take? Is there a rule of thumb there?
A few. The really official one, just to get used to bracketing, Here's what I recommend. You follow what I'm going to say, and then you figure out your own way. So the first few times that you're shooting, and you want to make sure the time that you want to make sure you're going to get it right, let's say. So here's what you do. Put your camera on spot meter the brightest, meter the darkest, and then set your bracketing to capture that whole range. There are some tools. If you're unfamiliar, you can go to hdrsoft.com/EV. EV is in exposure value. And it's this super simple little tool where you can say, here's the brightest measurement that I just took. Here's the darkest measurement that I just took. My camera can do bracketing in this way and that way. And then it'll tell you how to set to capture the bracketing. So it's a really cute little tool, very simple. Once you do it a few times, it becomes really clear. And there's really no reason that you would need to do that. You set the middle exposure, and then depending on your camera, so let's say if I needed to capture between half a second and a thousandth of a second, then I'd set it right in the middle. And then you set most cameras will say, tell me the middle shot, and then tell me how many to take on each end. So you can also check out the Photomatix YouTube channel has tutorials on quite a few different cameras on how to set bracketing on specific cameras. And then if your camera, if you have pretty much any Nikon is going to be similar, pretty much any Fuji is going to be similar. So if you're really wanting to learn how to do that and remove the mystery, then those are two great tools, hdrsoft.com/EV, and then the YouTube channel with those tutorials. And we get a lot of comments on the tutorials about, oh, finally, thank God, a specific tutorial that just gets to the point, super clear and detailed and nothing extra. So maybe check those out for those wondering just how to set my camera. And the whole HDRsoft website is full of tutorials and advice on this kind of stuff. And it really does keep things simple. There's not fluff. I mean, there's a lot to get out of it. But again, once you do it a few times, it's actually really simple. So don't be try to jump in, have fun with it. There's no reason to be intimidated by it. Moving on with the batch, you can, if you came in and you have images, and I do this a lot, if you have sets of images that vary, sometimes 3 shots is enough because the brightest and the darkest area, say when you're outside, it's not that wide of a range compared to when you're inside. You have a much wider dynamic range. So you can set the batch to detect which brackets go together. And so that's what this advanced selection section is all about. Down on the left is just how to save it. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. You can choose where, what kind of file. Again, we have 16-bit TIFF, 8-bit TIFF, JPEG, DNG, 8 and 16. All those options. You can choose to keep the 32-bit file if you want to. If you don't really know what that is, then you don't need it. And then what I really wanted to point out here are the options for what settings to use for this batch. Okay. So in the old days, you would just choose a preset. And if I didn't make that clear, you can save your own presets, like in the mode we were in before. You can save all your own if you want to, and then you can apply them here, or you can use any of the ones that were built in. Then at some point, there was the option to apply multiple presets. So what that means is that if you have, for each set of bracketed images, you can get multiple kinds of results. So you can apply different styles and things to the same sets. This is great when you're learning too, because you can just say, I can just choose a whole bunch of them and start adding in balanced preset, then change the preset, add realistic. Oops, I missed the balanced one. Realistic. Balanced. I can just start adding in all the presets, painterly, which is going to be looking crazy. And then I can run all of those different presets and get many results for each set. That way you just kind of learn what's possible. It's another way of doing what we did before, where you really see what's possible by applying a bunch of them.
Yeah.
And then here's the new mode that's, and again, it's kind of real estate oriented, but it's also, maybe you come in after a trip and you just want to go through your images really fast and thumb through them and choose your results really quickly. Then here's how you do that. You apply that section that we showed, the folder, tell it which folder to process, and then it's going to just pull up each set and show you a preview. So usually you're just wanting to go through here really quickly. I think I'm just going to go to the built-in presets. I click on my presets. These are all stuff that I've saved myself over some time, but I'll just use the built-in ones because that's what most people will see. I can choose, like, again, natural, and then maybe I'll spend 2 seconds or 2 minutes, depending on me, on each one, and just maybe kick up some brightness, click next. Now I have an interior. Now the interiors are going to normally need very different kinds of settings than the exteriors. As you can see, it doesn't look very good from what we had outside. I'm going to go up here and choose this real estate filter. Again, that just shows us the presets that we think works most often with interiors. So with one click, I got pretty close there. Let me just, I don't know, pull down the saturation just to show something different. Click next. This one looks quite a bit darker. So let's start with a preset, pump up some brightness, maybe bring down shadows. No, bring them back up. Okay, so getting us either 100% or close to where we want to be on each one. So again, we can change completely, go back to natural, use our exposure balance, bringing everything together, just pump up some brightness. It's real estate. You want to be bright, right? So click next. Same thing either way. So we don't need to do each one, but this one, here's one that has some color cast. So I can control the specific colors. What is that? A little bit of orange on my screen anyway. It looks pretty orange. So let's, and that's, I shot JPEG, so I have to go with the color that the camera decided, right? So I'm just going to pump up the one way to handle color cast that we found is to just lean into it. And if it's a little bit orange or yellow, I chose to work with the orange color, and I brought up the brightness of the orange, and that actually is a great way of a quick fix of avoiding that. So just remove color cast in a really quick way and click next. So now we're back in an exterior again. So probably what I did inside isn't going to work. So I can kind of reset things by just going back to one of the presets over there. Again, we're just, oops, I'm still in orange. We don't want that. Bring the brightness up a little bit. Right there. Same thing here. Oh, I think we need to play with the orange again. Maybe desaturate just a little.
Seasoned to taste, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of the point, isn't it? Is I could be, we could be talking about all these things all day. I like to say that, these are just what I would call a everyday kind of real estate condo. I did it. So if you don't like them, that was me. But it's just kind of quick in and out, right? Not too much work that needs to be done. So, and I'm getting about 90% there. That's my workflow anyway, is what?
And any kind of like geometry adjustment, like if you had, some sort of distortion introduced by the lens, like converging lines or bowing or anything like that, this is where you'd fix that at this step when you're kind of seasoning to taste.
This step is just the HDR part, just the tone mapping part, bringing.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. You do that in. Sorry, that's the step after. You're in Lightroom or Photoshop. That's when you're fixing the geometry and all that. Right?
Yeah. What I would like to do with that, like I go back and forth between workflows. Sometimes I like to fix the geometry first, but again, this one purposely I used it as a workflow test, shooting both RAW and JPEG, because I went through the JPEGs and I find that if I don't have to spend time importing to Lightroom, to me, that's one of the most time consuming parts of this kind of workflow is the import to Lightroom. It takes forever.
Right.
And then I can run the batch right from Lightroom. There's a batch plugin as well. So I can do that. I can do the geometry first. But what I was hoping to do was, when I did mostly get the geometry right, there were only small changes. There were a couple of mistakes, like on all those exteriors. I noticed that it was leaning. So what happened is, instead of doing a longer workflow, but getting it right first, what I did was this kind of workflow, and then identified a handful of images that I needed to tweak, which I just did really quickly in Camera Raw. So by shooting JPEG, saving as TIFF, I maintained more than enough of the detail. Like people say, oh, I would never shoot JPEG. Well, depends on what you're going to do with it. When it's going to be combined into what the way we've seen it now, where you take the brackets, combine them, tone map them, and create a TIFF. Well, how much did you really lose by shooting, quote unquote, shooting full-size JPEG with the least compression? So they are compressed, but in this kind of workflow, like I was saying, it's a quick in and out. It's a small job. You just go in and do it, send them off, and you're done. And in this kind of situation, I didn't feel like I lost anything significant with the JPEGs. And if you're good with white balance, that's a perfectly good workflow. So anyway, I'm one of those people. This is not just photography, everything in life. I'm like, do what works for you, right? And this is a tool that offers you so many ways, so many avenues you can take. And I love hearing what people are doing. I talk to real estate photographers who do things like their 5th or 6th bracket is actually a flash shot, and they just integrate it right in there. So they have, instead of 3, 4, 5 bracketed shots, they have one more. And that one is like an ITTL flash shot that helps with the color. So they just add that, and that's part of their batch. And so I love all of the innovation going on. I try to emulate some of them, and some of them I'm like, I don't know how he does it or how she does it, but I can't do it as well. So yeah, I encourage anyone to try different methods, come up with your own. We do have tutorials that I was part of putting together where it's great for getting started. Like I mentioned before, where do it kind of this official way, always intending to find your own way, but go meter for the brightest, meter for the darkest, learn about the bracketing setup. It becomes really easy, really fast. And then as you are out there doing it, you're developing your own style. And so don't therefore follow every detail that we put together for you. That was just to get you started. And I'd like to see anyone using their own ways.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. Cool. So then, as you start to wrap this up, one of the closing questions that I'll throw at you are, of course, pricing, right? So when we look at these kinds of software, and lately it's been, I think, led by Adobe in a lot of ways. The expectation is I'm going to pay a monthly or whatever, annual or whatever fee for this software. What does that look like on the Photomatix side?
$99. It's the Photomatix Pro is the standalone app that has everything that I showed. There is a bundle for $119 that comes with all the plugins, including HDR Batch, and there's a Photoshop plugin. But really, the Photomatix Pro is the key. So it's $99, and no, it's not a subscription. It never expires. In fact, it'll never expire. You can use if you buy Photomatix Pro 7, then you'll always be able to use that. Granted, there might be some compatibilities and years that are needed to update, but no, it'll never expire. And then if you do need to, for those, like with the new version that just came out, some people are, a lot of users that have been around for a while will be asked to upgrade, and that's $29. So then that would be people from, I think if you bought after 2017, so it's been some years. If you bought Photomatix Pro 6, you won't be asked to pay anything. So it'd have to be prior to 2017. but that's getting in the weeds. It's either it's 99 bucks to buy it, and every long while there's some upgrades for 29 bucks. You know, let's keep paying the developers. You know.
Yeah, no, for sure. You're sure. Yeah, but no subscription and no plans for subscription in the immediate future.
No, in fact, this version, I remember with just the inflation and everything, I was a little surprised that there was no price increase. I think it's always been $99, and the few times you have to upgrade, it's always been $29. So it's very it's a customer oriented company. That's why I get along with them so well. Is we're all like we create this tool. I'm the photographer. I don't do any creation of the tool, but
hey, you're the tip of the spear, man. Don't discount yourself.
Well, I really like the situation. I'm not a sales guy, but I do love doing this kind of thing. And so if I need to be the face, that's cool. I've been using the product, and it got my photography going in the early 2000s from a hobbyist. You know, I was a film guy and all that, but professionally, I started shooting panoramas and going out and getting restaurants and people to hire me. And I couldn't have done it without, you know, Photomatix is brand new. It was the only game going. There were no competitors yet. Yeah. And it helped really throw me into doing things professionally, because I was not going to go into a Italian restaurant and shoot a bunch of 360s and set up lighting for each one of them. This just wasn't going to happen. So it really made it possible to bracket and solve that problem a new way.
Be a one man band photographer that can do a lot with a little, right?
Yeah. I used to watch the professionals when I was working in hotels and restaurants. We'd have the professionals come in, and they would spend all day to get one image. Now, it was a fantastic image, and it was with full lighting. They would gel, they would set up, they would have multiple assistants. They'd have maybe models, or maybe those of us that worked there would be in seats and stuff, and they would light. And so you could see the view and you could see the interior, and it was gorgeous, but they spent all day doing that. And you don't have to do that with the ability to bracket and put it together. And so it's just one. I think I even said this a couple of times when we were talking yesterday about the interview style was, it's one tool in the toolbox. And there are so many situations when you're a photographer, you're a problem solver, and you're going to choose the right tool for the job. And it might not be the same tool every time. I try not to be the photographer that says, I've got one tool and I'm going to use it for everything. You know, that's not how this works. Yeah. So I've been a big user, and I just get more and more involved with the company as time goes by. And yeah. So anybody, I hope you're welcome to try it. It's free to try. It's I didn't run the batch. Sorry. I could click run, but I don't want to use the computer power while we're streaming. Yeah.
That's tempting the fates right there, right?
Yeah. So go to hdrsoft.com, click download. It's free to try it. It's the trial is just, it doesn't expire or anything, but it'll add a watermark to processed images. So you can try everything out. And besides that, like I say, if you're someone that finds it mysterious about how to bracket, there's a lot of helpful information on the website. There's a learn page with tons of things. The YouTube channel has the real detailed things about a lot of cameras. If you're someone who maybe said, oh, HDR, ick, you know, that's because this look became popular, unfortunately, but you don't have to have that. If you look at my stuff on hotels and stuff like that, we go for realism. It's always about realism. I don't want you to sit there, and I don't want someone to go look at it and go, oh, that's an HDR shot. It's just a photograph. And I used a certain workflow, but there should be no signs that it was HDR, because if you're viewing it, it's not HDR. The process might've been HDR, but there's really, in a technical way, there's no such thing as a photo that you're looking at that's HDR. Because
you're trying to make a pleasing image that satisfies the goal of the image, whether it's real estate and you need a balanced interior with windows that you can actually see out of instead of having just a bright white, or you're going more artistic, and that's the ultimate goal of the image, is to have this high saturation, hyper realistic, crunchy looking scene of downtown Tokyo or New York City or something, right?
What if you lit the scene, but you also took it a bracketed sequence and combine those later? There are a million things. I do that. I do that with certain things. I'll take a bracketed sequence, I'll use Fusion, or I'll tone map it, and I'll get it to where it's pretty close, or parts of the scene are perfect and other parts are not. And I'll also light it, and I'll combine the two. So there's such a, it's such a rich thing, photography. There's so many ways to do everything. Yeah. And so that's the way I look at it. And I'm sorry, I'm keep giving more and more advice, but the main one is just try it. And if you're not, just get if you're not getting the results you like, support at hdrsoft.com, and me and a couple other people will answer you. So let us know what's happening. Yeah.
Well, cool, man. All right, we'll leave it right there. Support at HDR Soft if you're already an HDR Soft customer, or you just bought it and you have questions. The support area on the HDR Soft website, I'm guessing just on the front page there's a support button or something there they can click to get in there.
Yep. Well, you can as far as learning and tutorials and things, there's a learn button. There's stuff all throughout the site. And for support, you don't have to be a customer. You can still write to us. And there's a form, but you can just support at hdrsoft.com is probably the easiest way to go. Okay. And because, I can't think of any other details can you think of anything?
Like the last message is to just get the software and go out there and try it, right? And go out and do some stuff, see what it can do. I think that's the hump that a lot of photographers, two humps, I think. The one hump is the stigma that goes along with that acronym HDR. It's like, oh, it's going to be that crunchy stuff. I don't do that. That's for, those people that do that kind of work. And then the other one is, I want to do it. I know I need to do it, but it's hard. It's very difficult. I think you hit it home in this demo of it's not hard, right? It's another tool in your toolbox. It's like it's another screwdriver, another Phillips head, another hammer, or whatever to help you get from point A to point B in your image career.
Like so many things in our life, it seems really mysterious until you just kind of dive in and do it, and then it's just not after that.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. That's very well put. All right, my friend, we will leave it right there. Thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. So people want to grab this, head over to hdrsoft.com to grab it. And they can download it, $99. Is there a free trial for it, or is it just $99 and you're off?
Yep, just download it on the regular download page. Just it's the same download whether you have a license or not. It'll just run in the trial mode that adds a watermark. And then if you do purchase it, you just put in the key and then it just stops doing the watermark. So it's all very simple, all very customer oriented, making it easy to try, making it easy to get it, making it easy, making upgrades easy. Yeah. It's kind of what we're all about.
Very good. Congratulations on, this piece of software that's been just sort of staying the course. Right. Yeah. Shooting stars of other software coming and going or radically changing their business models and all that. And then HDR Soft is just steady as she goes. Keep it going. Yeah.
Yeah. It was evolutionary once, and now it's it's steady and, just really well produced and supported. And at this point, it's a very mature product that, it should align your images pretty much no matter what. I mean, occasionally someone will say, how come my images don't align? And I say, well, send them to me. And it'll be some crazy parallax in the image where there's so many moving parts and things close to the camera. That's just not really what it's for.
Yeah. I was trying to capture this shot of the sunset from a moving train. And you said I could handhold, Ron.
Yeah, exactly.
So cool, man. All right, we'll close it right there. Thanks everybody for watching this video. And once again, I encourage you to watch the other part of this interview, which is non-demo. It's just the one-on-one discussion and kind of with Ron bringing us up to speed on the HDR industry overall, and just talking about the software from I don't want to say philosophical perspective, but just more of this is what it can do, this is what it's for, this is where it came from, and all that. All the stuff that is not demo. And then this one obviously is demo. So thanks a lot, Ron Pepper.
If you'd like to see Frederick Van Johnson and Ron Pepper out in the field shooting brackets and talking about setting up the camera, let us know. Because we were just talking about doing.
We were teasing. Yeah, we should, because we live close to each other. So we were thinking of grabbing the camera back there and me shadowing this guy as he goes out and in real time captures footage, you know, or the shots that would then be converted into HDR. So, or into an HDR photograph. So yeah, let us know. Yeah, sound off in the comments of this episode. If you're in the TWiP Pro community, sound off in there. Let me know what you think, and we can make that happen. So cool. All right, man. Thank you. You have a great weekend. Thanks for stopping by and letting us do this. Let me do this interview.
Yeah, by all means, welcome. It's fun. I love doing things like this. So if people encourage us to go out and do some other ones, then we'll probably do it.
Yep, we'll do it. Cool, man. All right. Have a good one. See you later. This is TWiP.